Inflation Nation and Elon and Tesla have let us hands. That and more in News Made Simple. I am your host, Cory Tusick, along with Luke Mikic and Phil Gibson, guitar. Um, Gentlemen, it has been an interesting week. And before we get into it, I want to thank our sponsor, the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Go to shiftcrypto.ch/Bitcoin made simple. Use the promo code Bitcoin made simple to get 5% off and secure your keys because man, I don't know. I mean, this isn't one of the news items, but I just saw one of the Coinbase managers was caught in some insider trading and trying to flee the country. So, uh, woo, it's yeah. Secure your keys, ladies and gentlemen. Do not keep them on an exchange. You're muted, Luke.
You go, yeah, that's very, very interesting. Well, 2 months ago, we saw Celsius release a declaration that was obviously going wild on Twitter, where they were saying, in case of a solvency or an insolvency and a bankruptcy, your coins deposited on Celsius, they're ours. And then obviously Coinbase also released a very similar notification at the end of a quarterly filing. And obviously we haven't quite seen what's going on with Coinbase yet, but it's very
Yeah,
interesting that one of their key members is
I know
under fire.
it's to the point. I mean, again, not to like overly shill, shift crypto and the Bitbox O2 hardware wallet, but seriously, like I don't feel safe even like buying off of an exchange like Swan. I trust Swan, so it's like okay, that's good. And obviously, you can just automatically put it right in your wallet. But it's in my mind, sometimes I think the only way to really get Bitcoin is to mine it. At this point, that's how I feel. Like it's just it's dangerous out there. And shout out to Swan, by the way. Go to Movies Plus, mymoviesplus.com in the App Store, and you can get $20 1 year for $20 of Movies Plus. Use the promo code Swan. You also get $10 in Bitcoin, so makes it even cheaper. And you can also watch Natalie Brunell and her show Hard Money on there on Movies Plus. So, anyways, into the news. Um, Banks in China tanks. This is a new one because I think the cracks are starting to show in China because their compliant population is starting to try and go to their banks and get their money out, and they have tanks sitting outside. So much for how green is Bitcoin, because I don't think it's very green to have tanks running outside of banks.
That's a brilliant point. I might steal that and turn that into a tweet, because I don't think I've seen anyone actually mention that fact that obviously tanks is part of the legacy financial system, and how much fuel does that guzzle every day, boys? I'd imagine it would guzzle a whole lot of those dirty fossil fuels. So that not very green from our banking industry.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of green, I don't think it was a topic we are going to discuss, but it just popped into mind at the moment. But I think the Bitcoin Mining Council released their quarterly findings for Q2 2022, and they showed that once again, Bitcoin was the most green country around the world. I think it uses 59.5% renewable energy. Yes, I think it's good that Bitcoin uses energy. I 100% agree with that framing that Marty Bent proposes, but it's also nice to have empirical data on our side as well.
Yeah. I mean, the data, it's funny because the data's there and Elon and Tesla still won't take Bitcoin payments um, for their Teslas. Maybe that's because they're not selling any. I don't know. Maybe people aren't buying Teslas, so it's kind of hard to accept Bitcoin payments when nobody's sending payments of any kind.
I don't
Um,
know if it's because of legacy bros that do those spaces like George Noble and Three Aces or whoever, not to give them shout outs or anything. I enjoy their spaces though, but I don't know if it's just because they're salty about Elon, but I just hear from a variety of people of how just dog shit Tesla cars are and that all these other competitors are better, just like cheap material. And it's, yeah, way
I'll tell you
overhyped.
what, I want to go the opposite of a hackable car. I tell you, the next car I buy, I swear to you, the next car I buy is going to be like a 1960s Camaro that
Yeah.
I can fix up and runs mechanically, and you pour some gas into it and it works and the pistons fire
Yeah.
and nobody can use a satellite to shut it down.
Yeah. Joe Rogan likes doing that. He likes pimping out old cars, and the interior is all not like 2022 technology because you don't want a computer inside your car, but it's like modern and comfy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean the air conditioning systems sucked back in the day, so you got to revamp that.
Yeah.
But yeah, the like I'll never forget, not to get on cars too much, but I'll never forget the first Transformers movie, the original car that Bumblebee was before they made it a modern Camaro. I was like, holy shit, like that's the car I want for the rest of my life.
I need to look this up now.
But anyways, yeah, it's funny. One of the topics I guess we'll get into is the Elon and Tesla having lettuce hands, letting those bitcoins just slide right through their slithering fingers. Maybe Elon was too busy bulking up his chest to try and focus on his Bitcoin strategy. And we all knew this day was coming.
Maybe.
By the way, shout out to who is that? Is that who's AEHW? He said, is that Walton?
Oh yeah, that's Walton.
He said,
Walton.
did Cory not get the memo about wearing a vest?
There we go.
The answer, Walton, is that I don't have the slim physique that these boys do. I got the dad bod. The dad bod.
Mate, you've got the broad shoulders to rock a is that a Dunder Mifflin shirt? I see you sporting.
It is a Dunder Mifflin. Dunder Mifflin paper people.
Anyone who hasn't watched The Office, definitely go and watch it. But I
Yeah,
suppose.
but sorry, I got derailed there with the comment. But
I'm good to tackle. Just
go for it.
Something from MT or mountgox.com. They have a little briefing about the whole Tesla thing. So if anyone's not paying attention, like me, because I didn't really pay attention to this kind of news this week, but if anyone didn't pay attention, Tesla had reported that they dumped 75% of its remaining Bitcoin last quarter at a loss. And Elon Musk knows that Mt. Gox victims are about to receive back their Bitcoin. So exactly 2 weeks ago, Mt. Gox trustee Nob Uaki.
We'll just call him Knob.
Yeah, let's go with that. Knob made an announcement, information on repayment procedures, stating, quote, the rehabilitation trustee is currently preparing to make repayments in according with the approved rehabilitation plan, of which confirmation order of the Tokyo District Court was made final and binding on November 16th, 2021. And let's see here. So again, this is coming from MT Gox. So even though MT Gox victims are only receiving back a fourth of the Bitcoin that they originally had on exchanges, the average Mt. Gox customer paid $300 per Bitcoin. So with Bitcoin today trading 80x higher, they will still be making the 20x back more than their original investment, as long as they sell immediately. We don't buy the argument that because these investors are OGs, they will hodl their Bitcoin. They're lucky that Mt. Gox got hacked and somehow 200,000 Bitcoin got quote unquote discovered in a text file on some old Mt. Gox laptop. Otherwise, most of them would have sold their Bitcoin long ago. Between December 2017 and February 2018, when Mt. Gox trustee dumped approximately 50,000 Bitcoin into the market, Bitcoin crashed by 70% from $19,666 down to $5,920, with approximately 150,000 Bitcoin to be returned to Mt. Gox victims in the upcoming weeks. The Bitcoin market is about to be flooded with supply that had been held tightly for the last 8 years. If Bitcoin crashes as much as we expect, Michael Saylor at MicroStrategy will default on its debt and be forced to dump 129,218.
That's not happening. All right.
Nah.
So here, hold on, not to cut you off, but Walton just posted in the chat and said that Tesla is selling in order to show a positive revenue for Q2. If they didn't, then they would have been negative.
Yeah, they had like
which
an
is
800. They had an $800 million loss. So they sold, what was it, 900 million dollars of Bitcoin, or $1 billion of Bitcoin. So it was like the perfect sale.
I mean, I guess as much as we all like to make fun of Michael Burry for not Dr. Michael Burry for not getting Bitcoin, um he has been shorting the shit out of Tesla, and it makes sense that if your company is surviving off of tax credits and suddenly those tax credits and subsidies disappear, um you got to find cash somewhere.
I mean, don't they get a that tax return that lets them buy more Bitcoin?
What's that?
I mean, if they're selling at a, what was it, loss? I mean, they're selling at a huge loss, so that's just going to be a fat tax return for them to buy
Oh
more
yeah, I mean it'll
Bitcoin,
boost
right?
they'll have uh capital what's it called, capital, not gains, losses, but yeah, I don't know, I think it's bullish. Obviously everything's bullish for Bitcoin, but I kind of wanted this from the beginning. Like I love, there's so many people in this space that I love, but I remember, and I even was like excited when Elon originally bought, like right off the bat, maybe for like a day, but then like I remember just kind of being like cringy, like so many people were like Elon, Elon, and it was like, like doesn't really need him. We don't need him. If anything, he proved that it's a good it can be liquidated, and need his BS excuse of, oh, we need to test its liquidity. Um, yeah, it worked out for you. Um, and I think it's hilarious that nothing happened. Like there was no reaction when I saw that yesterday. Like yesterday, I was out of the office. I was not paying attention to like literally anything. Had one moment to like look and see. I was like, oh, wow, Tesla sold 75% of their Bitcoin. I'm assuming the price is tanking, and it wasn't. I was like, that's interesting.
I think that's the point to drill down on. And that kind of wraps up this kind of Mount Gox FUD along with the Elon FUD. Like Bitcoin's probably one of the more liquid markets in the world. And I don't think, even if these Mount Gox people sell 140,000 Bitcoin or however many Bitcoin they've got instantly on the market, I actually expect the market to hold up pretty strongly. I mean, we watched this recently. I mean, a lot of people were doom posting about Luna. Oh, Bitcoin's going to go to zero because Luna's going to sell thousands and thousands of Bitcoin. Yeah, we had a little correction, but I think the market held up pretty well and pretty fine. And what you don't see in Bitcoin is you don't see tanks having to defend the Bitcoin protocol because people want to withdraw their money and sell and test liquidity. And I suppose that kind of transitions us into the next piece of news. We're literally watching tanks on the street in China, whether it's a psyop or not. Who knows? Who knows? It could be all acting. You have to be very careful about what you see in China and what's actually being let out in China or on social media. But what looks like it's happening is there is tanks on the streets in China. What do you think, boys?
Phil?
I mean, revolution's going to happen during this time. I didn't follow this at all. It's not really a surprise. So what's been the collateral damage so far?
So I think there's been a few banks in China that have been freezing withdrawals or halting withdrawals since May this year. So May 2022. I think initially it was kind of sold as, oh no, we're just upgrading the system. We're just making some improvements. Withdrawals will come back online shortly. So this was in May 2022, months and months ago, obviously. And when did China introduce their recent round of lockdowns? Trying to lock down the world. And a lot of people, myself included, were kind of pointing at those lockdowns thinking, okay, maybe this is a geopolitical move. Maybe they're locking down their citizens, preparing them for a potential invasion of Taiwan, or maybe a potential war, or maybe they're locking down their citizens to wreak havoc on the supply chain and use that as an economic weapon to kind of export inflation to the West. If you're not sending goods and services to the West, obviously prices are going to continue skyrocketing. But maybe, just maybe, these kind of cerveza sickness zero policies that were being re-implemented earlier this year, maybe they would have kind of stop the citizens from protesting, subdue the citizens so that they can't go out there and try to get money out of the bank.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is why
I mean,
Bitcoin.
It's why I think that there's going to be a cyber pandemic outside of the fact that they already told us there's going to be one. Is that, I saw somebody's thread, I forget who it was, so I can't shout them out, but somebody had a thread about, why the internet will go down and go dark sometime this year.
That's retarded.
Yeah, it's a little bit of like a doom post. Like I was like, it's off. It doesn't hit the nail on the head, but like they're right in the general premise was like, do you think the governments would want you to be able to have this? And the answer is no. I think that it's a monster that got out of hand. They were like, oh, we could use this, and now I've said this before, we could use this to survey people, and then smarter people, the anons, the autism crew, like what does Shinobi always say? He says, autism always wins. And you can't beat autism. And so you have all these smarter people creating systems and tunnels around this interweb, and they beat them at their own game. And so it's kind of like game over at the moment. Doesn't mean they're not going to inflict really harsh, but it's crazy because you have to think that in China people are starting to mobilize a little bit on their own, like more outside of the Chinese control than China's used to, because it's getting a little ugly.
They're a very subdued culture, so it's kind of interesting to see them uprising like this.
But
huge signpost.
Yeah, huge. So I think that's just another marker for everyone to be like, okay, all right, stuff's going down, batten down the hatches. I also think like just in general macro views, like let's talk about inflation, and then we can kind of have like a macro discussion after that, because I don't think the macro is going to shift that's going to like make Bitcoin explode here in the near term, but I'm sure we can have a debate about that. But inflation obviously is crazy. Who was it? Was it the UK just printed like a 9.4 or something inflation print for July? I think June. I think I just saw that come out today. So we know it's off the charts everywhere. Do you think next week, Phil, they're going? I know your answer already, but I'm just tossing this softball up there, underhand, lobbing the ball, just crank it out of the park. Do you think they're going to raise rates next week?
Well, everyone knows they're going to raise rates. It's how much are they going to?
Are they going to do?
A couple of weeks ago, there were like 100 basis points, and now I think because of the Eurodollar futures curve, the market's trying to price in like, no, they're going to raise 75 because the Fed can't, the whole you can't taper Ponzi bullshit. And again, as fans of the show know and listen to me, Fed doesn't give a fuck about inflation. They will destroy the global economy. And if they need to, they'll raise 100 basis points. And I really hope they do. So that's what I'm hoping for. The minimum is going to be 75, like no doubt, full stop. Maybe they meet somewhere in the middle, like 90 basis points. But I hope Powell just goes balls to the wall and does a full percentage point. And then next time, I think I mentioned this on the show too, but I would love to see him go like 25 bips more than the market expects just to fuck with them. So people expect 75. This time it's 100. People expect 100 next time. Then it's 125, and then like 150 the next time. And or maybe the market starts pricing that in because they actually understand that, oh, we should take the Fed seriously. Like they're not fucking around. Because what's their MO? Preserve the dollar, preserve America's credit worthiness, and declare monetary independence from the rest of the world. And they're not going to be the lender of only resort anymore. No matter how much Davos wants them to, I want to bring this up because I wrote a thread that Dano DiMartina Booth retweeted, which was fucking awesome. I mean, that just goes to show that she is on my team, Team Fed, or understands what the fuck's actually going on. But one headline that caught my attention last week is that there was basically the Democrats want $650 billion of US SDR funds at the IMF to go towards Ukraine, which is just a loop around of the system fighting back against the Fed's declaring monetary independence, and instead making the Fed still the lender of only resort to bail out the financial system in the world by basically taking the money that the United States is already kind of parked at the IMF. And so that is just going to go towards, laundering money in Ukraine and also bailing out the ECB, the European Central Bank. And so, again, that's just another Davosian cry for desperation as well. So it would only make sense that Powell says, fuck you guys. We're going home. We're staying home. We're going to keep raising rates as much as possible.
Luke, what do you think is going to happen?
I'm just sitting on the edge of my seat with some popcorn. I don't really care what way things materialize. I got a radical view that I think we're going to be on a Bitcoin standard by the end of the decade. I think the dollar milkshake thesis will play out either way, whether Powell is aggressively raising interest rates to bankrupt the world and collapse the global economy and the global eurodollar market, or whether you're going to see a Powell pivot and align himself with Japan and start buying JGBs, Japanese bonds, and all sorts of crap. I don't think it matters which way you go. I think by the end of the decade, you're going to see two currencies left, Bitcoin and the dollar. I think a lot of people kind of get caught up on the micro, like, oh, is it going to be a one basis point rise or a 1.25? It's cool to follow. It's interesting. But I'm not sure which way they're going to go in the short term. I think short-term price predictions are near impossible. Short-term interest rate predictions are nearly impossible to do. I think Bitcoin and the macro will continue to be extremely volatile over the next few years. I think expect the unexpected. But yeah, I'm just sitting back with popcorn. I'm not sure which way it's going to go. I'm literally 50-50. I like both theses. It's definitely interesting. I'm watching it.
If you had to put a likelihood, do you think it's over or under 75 basis points?
No, it's over. It's whether or not.
All right. Is it over or
much?
under 90 basis points?
Yeah, I'm an over as well. I actually am an over as well. But the thing is, I think you're going to see a pivot sooner than most people think. Just because if you do, you're either going to see a pivot or you're not going to see Europe anymore. Europe will be bankrupt.
That's the goal, Luke.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm watching both scenarios. It's interesting.
I think 50-50. It's to bankrupt. Yeah, I think it's to bankrupt Europe, but they have to, it's like we've talked about before, the handbrake. You're screaming downhill on a bike and you jam the handbrake on, you're going to flip over the handlebars. You slowly put it on, but the hills keeps getting steeper and steeper. You can't squeeze too hard. All you can do is slow down. You can't stop the train.
Yeah. Europe is already bankrupt. And this is just the analogy. Oh, nipple's still showing. This is still the analogy of like why they're destined to fail eventually. Because Greece with German bonds that Lagarde sold. And I explained this when I was on the Bitcoin Matrix podcast with Cedric. They have a finite supply of water, and all the central banks, I think there's 9 central banks total in Europe. Those are just different buckets. Okay, so where are you going to fill that water? And that's why they still want to take American funds and have America be the bailouter of the world by stealing that $650 billion sitting at the IMF to help bail out Europe and have them survive longer. And so that's why you need to pay attention to the incentives of why Powell is doing what he is doing. If you have them do this slingshot, oh God, I'm gonna sneeze. Okay, if you have them take these billions of dollars from the IMF, the Fed reacts to that because their end goal is to preserve their credibility. That's why Powell will not pivot, because at the end of the day, pivoting and printing more money signals this isn't the safest place to park my money. So again, you might think it's minutia between now and then, but I feel like if you want to, be a part of the conversation and have an opinion. You need to like understand where your opinion is coming from and why it's important that there's a process of elimination and like steps in the agenda of getting from point A to point B. Because every decision that is being made is important, even if it might just be out of clumsiness or serendipity, whatever. Each decision is based on an incentive, and that main incentive is driven by the desire to preserve the credibility of the United States treasuries and make capital flight flee Europe and the rest of the world to America. And so that's why I think it is crucial to understand why the Fed isn't doing this to combat inflation and why Powell's not going to pivot.
You're muted.
I think in such volatile times, it's good to have an opinion loosely held. I'm not wed to either scenario. I can see both scenarios. I understand both scenarios. I'm sitting back with popcorn watching both scenarios. I've changed my opinion. 6 months ago, I was of the opinion that there is absolutely no way that the Fed or central banks around the world can raise interest rates without collapsing the entire global economy and the entire global debt market. We live on a fractional reserve system that needs perpetually more growth and more debt. That was my view 6 months ago. I was like, there's no way they can raise rates mathematically. It's just simple maths. Now I'm entertaining the potential hypothesis that, hang on a minute, maybe Powell wants to bankrupt the entire global economy and raise rates, collapse Europe, collapse Eurodollar market. I'm not saying it's not happening. I think I've said for the past 6 weeks, I see both scenarios. I'm 50-50 on both scenarios. I'm sitting back with popcorn. I think either scenario significantly accelerates hyper-Bitcoinization. Like if Powell bankrupts the world, and I think if he does continue interest rates, it's going to happen a lot sooner than most people think. Like Powell won't be raising interest rates through the end of 2023. Europe, the second largest economy, or the second largest currency, the third largest economy, sorry, they will be bankrupt by the end of the year. The euro will be trading at like 70.
Good. That's the goal.
We'll see.
I mean, not doing that would undo all the work that the Fed's been doing for over a year.
Yep. Strap yourselves in, ladies and gentlemen, because I think if Europe no longer has a currency, that's obviously going to speed up the adoption for Bitcoin. I'm just not wed to either scenario.
I say on like the macro with Bitcoin, is to like the signpost would be like because it's gonna fluctuate, it's gonna go up and down, it's gonna do its thing. But what are gonna be the things that get the mom and pops into the retail, basically the retail into Bitcoin again? I don't know. This is like really, really loosely. This is just off the top of my head, but like,
I have an idea.
What?
So I think around 48 hours ago, we had the release of Fedi mints, which are like Chaumian mints meets Blockstream Federation, basically creating digital private cash on top of Bitcoin in like a IOU sort of structure, sort of kind of like a competitor to Lightning, but is based on like a federation of different banks or institutions. And I think to some level, plebs can even make these networks themselves. But just more developments like this that are user-friendly, user-focused in mind, and privacy preservation. And you're actually seeing these things come forward for once. And I think this ties in very nicely with those reports from the Fed of St. Louis and Cleveland of actual Fed academic papers looking into Bitcoin being legit.
It's the settlement. Honestly, the settlement base layer that Bitcoin will be, there's a lot of money spent by banks to have this settlement system.
Yeah. And
that money over time will get switched over to Bitcoin mining rewards.
Yep.
Like that is the transit. That's one of the transitions that I feel is coming and is going to happen. And like I said, I've told everybody, I mean, I'm just an idiot pleb that, doesn't know anything when it comes to finance, but I'm wading my way through this, and it's been really interesting because a lot of my perspective has changed. I'm not trying to say, oh, now that I have a Bitcoin miner, I know what is going on with mining, but it really changes your perspective. And you're like, wait a minute, this thing is a settlement machine. This is this transaction verifier. That's what this thing is.
Yeah.
And so right now, yeah, there is a block reward of 6.25 Bitcoin, which is great. But I mean, in the episode I just released with Steve Barber, he said, I actually incorrectly said I was off by a decimal point. He said, he's like, like the block rewards right now are like, include fees of like an average of 0.2 Bitcoin. And so I was like, I actually was wrong. And I've looked, like I'm on the slush pool. So I get a notification every time. And this is how dumb I was when I started mining Bitcoin. I was like, oh, I thought the block reward was 6.25, but for some reason it says 6.39. Why? And somebody like replied and was like, block reward plus fees. And I was like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm an idiot. I'll go back to my corner and shut up.
Yeah. But to tie this back into like, how does mom and pop, whatever, like jump into this? I like to take on from what Guy Swan talks about is that they won't even notice.
Yep.
And like just using Zelle, I think Zelle is just going to be replaced with Bitcoin solutions, and it's just all going to be under the hood, whether it's like masked with a new like Fediment like UI kind of thing. But again, if people learn about Bitcoin as a store of value and they put their treasury into it, that's great. But Bitcoin mom and pop like useness is just going to be a part
I'm thinking about
infrastructure, and we're seeing the evolution of how that infrastructure is being built out.
Think about all of the fees. PayPal will charge somebody $3 to send money. I mean, if you do friends and family or whatever, you can do it technically for free. But if it's business or whatever, but like there's so many mediums of exchange where there's a fee that's coming off, and all of those fees could eventually move into Bitcoin rewards. And it's funny too, because that's what Steve Barber said. Like, I posed the question to him. I said, what happens near 2140 when there's no more block rewards? And he's like, we're gonna find out a lot earlier than that. Like, the block reward is under 1 Bitcoin within like 12 years. So fees will be significantly higher, and we're going to find out. But I think, I haven't even looked into the Fediment too much, so I got to research that a little bit to get a better idea. But I think things like that are the signposts, though, like you said, of of getting mom and pop into it. But if anyone's wondering, like in the short term, it's like, you have to have that thing. Basically, when Elon bought in January of 2021, that was like the peak of retail FOMO. Because I mean, my dad called me and said, like, oh, I want to hurry up and buy as much as I can before Elon buys them all. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, I love you, Dad. So you're probably listening. But I'm not saying that my dad's not smart. I'm just saying that he didn't, he would listen to me talk about Bitcoin, but he was like, never like, yeah, I want to buy it. And then all of a sudden Elon buys it, and people were like, I want to buy. So like, if that's what my dad was doing, just imagine the, millions and millions and millions of other people that just FOMO'd in at that moment and caused that huge rise up. So you want to have that moment again? It's going to take some retail. It's going to take not a recession. I don't know. If I find it hard to see Bitcoin pump like crazy when we're in like a real recession / depression.
We've been going for a long time already, and we have already hit all the news topics. So I don't want to turn this into a tangent, but
no, go for it. No, go for it. I mean, and I'm not saying it can't happen. And what I'm trying to say is to the plebs out there, like, just be careful, guys. Like, I see the sentiment, and some of y'all need number go up a lot more than you let on. Cause like, Jesus, like it pumped up to 23K, and you would have thought just from the Twitter reaction, you would have thought that Bitcoin was at like, 150K. Like I was like, what the hell is going on? And I checked the price. I was like, oh, 23K. So I'm just saying, everybody be careful. Don't rely too much on number go up. Don't put more money in than you can afford to lose. And don't be gambling. If you're really, really, really watching the price, that means that you have too much money in. That's just my personal view.
Yeah.
But anyways, Luke, you think it can go up in a recession/depression?
Oh yeah, it will. Like if we do go through a global economic depression, like Phil believes we will strongly, and there's currently no banking system in Europe. What other option do they have? CBDCs aren't ready, because that's what happens. Like it happened in 2008. If the Fed continues raising interest rates, it will break the entire banking system. When the banking system is broken, that means capital freezes, and that means banks don't open. So that means you can't access your money. But more on the Bitcoin or pump without the plebs topic, I think over the past 24 months, you've watched 800,000 coins leave exchanges since March of 2020, and they've gone to the wallets of people classified as long-term holders who don't have a history of selling their Bitcoin. And I think we're just going to continue watching that trend happen. And when there's no Bitcoin left on exchanges, price will pump because people like Michael Saylor, people like lettuce hands, Elon, people like the Saudis. I know that's a meme, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Saudis were accumulating Bitcoin. I wouldn't be surprised if Putin was accumulating Bitcoin. I wouldn't be surprised if
they definitely are.
Yeah, exactly. Nayib Bukele isn't in the ear of many Latin American countries that he's friends with in the area, and they're all stacking Bitcoin. I think that's what we're watching. I think we're watching nation state accumulation. I think when Bitcoins run out on exchanges, you're going to watch an absolute face melting rally. And the sad reality of it is a lot of retail is going to miss out. So stack some sats now, stick those suckers into some cold. What were you going to say, Cory?
I was going to say, yes, stick those into a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet from Shift Crypto, because this is when the winners are made here in the bear market, when you stack like crazy, but don't over leverage yourself. That's what I'm telling people.
Don't leverage yourself, full stop.
No, by over leverage, I mean, I guess don't get out over your skis. You shouldn't buy Bitcoin with leverage ever. You shouldn't use debt to buy Bitcoin, and just don't get out over your skis. Don't get more comfortable, or don't get out beyond where you're comfortable.
But anyone that was telling you to take out equity on your house last year and go all in Bitcoin, you're a fucking moron. Also, to add to what Luke said, or to I guess a disclaimer. Yes, in a world economic crisis, people are going to flee to safe haven assets after they liquidate as much cash as they can. But the first safe haven asset is going to be U.S. Treasuries. So as Luke and I think, discussed with Tone Bays on a Spaces earlier this week, Treasuries, 10-year Treasury bonds, U.S. Treasury bonds are how you scale having a shit ton of your wealth. So first you flee to cash, but then you can't just hold billions of dollars of cash. So that's going to hit the Treasury markets. The yield curve on the U.S. Treasury is going to start, dampening. So it won't be like 3% or whatever. And you're going to have an increase in bond prices. And this all goes back to increasing the credibility and trustworthiness and safety of investing your money into the United States. Then it's probably going to go to the Dow, because as you see the global economic system corrode and you see capital flight, watching the Dow, just because of how liquid it is and all the blue chips that are in it, watching the Dow go up is the best way to look at global capital flight and foreign investment coming out of Europe and anywhere else and into the United States. Then and only then will you probably see an appreciation in the price of Bitcoin. Oh, and not to forget the appreciation in gold probably as well.
Yeah, I don't know. We haven't seen capital flight yet. So, I mean, we've watched the US dollar gain 25% of its value against the euro over the past 12 months. We've watched the Dixie rally to 20-year highs. So everybody's fleeing to dollars, but nobody's fleeing to bonds. TLT,
because not everybody's liquidated as much as possible yet. Okay. Like we're talking global capital flight. So we still need to destroy Europe first.
It does actually, the TLT, the 20-year US government bond, does actually look like it's maybe bottoming now. Maybe. We'll see. It does maybe look as if it's put in a bottom, but the facts are it's lost 35% of its value in the past 12 months. So capital flight is going to US dollars alone at the moment. Yes, it will flow to US equities and US treasuries over international markets. That is the dollar milkshake thesis that we've been talking about for the past 2 years. And I also think there could be a little bit of a Bitcoin straw in that dollar milkshake thesis. Like the plebs, maybe we can round out on this. We've been going for hours, but I think the question Cory asked a little while ago, what's going to get the plebs to buy Bitcoin?
Well, not the plebs. The plebs are buying Bitcoin left.
Retail.
Right. Yeah. What's going to take for the
What'd you call me?
the
Retail.
randos?
So firstly, we don't need retail for Bitcoin to go to $10 million.
Oh, retail. Okay.
Are you making fun of my Australian accent? You're unreal. Well,
we would never make fun of an Aussie accent.
It's okay. Everyone does. I love it. I love a good nip slip. So I mean, if retail needs an advertisement to buy Bitcoin, the first reason I gave was when the banking system shuts down, like it has in Canada for protesters in the Freedom Convoy, like it will in Europe. The European ATMs will close very shortly. That will be a massive advertisement for Bitcoin. And I think the biggest next kind of point I was going to touch on was I think there's over 30 countries around the world that are experiencing official government approved CPI inflation above 15%. So obviously we know the real inflation in those countries is probably much more like 30. So 30 countries have official CPI inflation over 15%.
Nice.
That's an advertisement for Bitcoin and retail.
Nice. And I will walk back. I think we are starting to see some capital flight into Bitcoin this week. I mean, with the Chinese protests and just turmoil in Europe, I mean, we're seeing this in other assets as well, and a little bit in the Dow. And so I think we might be seeing the beginnings, whispers of actual global capital flight happening to those safe haven assets. But more to come.
Agreed. I actually think we've seen it for the past 2 years. That's why I keep banging on about 700,000 coins have left the exchanges. So I think we've been seeing capital flight. But what you're seeing is exchanges are rehypothecating Bitcoin. So the price actually isn't going anywhere. It's going down, giving the big players an opportunity to accumulate Bitcoin. Again, we've been going for probably over an hour, so I could strap on a tinfoil hat and say maybe who's telling what exchanges to rehypothecate Bitcoin to suppress the price. But I think June was like one of the worst months in Bitcoin's history. Q2 2022 was also one of the worst quarters in Bitcoin's history. But in that month, over the past month, 150,000 Bitcoins have left the exchanges.
Yeah. And I think I mentioned this too, but the powers that be are trying to dampen all the price of safe haven assets so they can scoop up as much as possible and leave everyone else poor and happy. Right?
Exactly. That's a not so nice note to maybe leave today's little wrap on.
Buy Bitcoin, Bitbox02.
Yeah,
Bitcoin made simple, 5% off.
Bitcoin is the great reset.
Get the bitbox.
Oh, here we go. No beatboxes, no beatboxing, boys. Let's round this one out.
Hold on, to leave with a beatbox.
Please don't.
I met a priest
What?
that said, "I am like a competition winning beatboxer." I was like, "What? Like, no way." So he just starts off like, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." Then all of a sudden, I don't even know how this was happening. He was making so many noises at the same time. One of the best beatboxers I've ever seen. And he's just this like priest from like some like bizarre, like, some country, like, not the, like, he's not even from like a major country. And he was just like unbelievable at beatboxing. Yeah, it was like unbelievable. Like his nose was making like, record scratches and like doing like the melody all while he was doing like it was nuts.
But would you say it was god tier beatboxing?
Oh yeah, it was god tier. Like you could only beatbox like that if you are you're
possessed by the Holy Ghost.
Yep. It was nuts. So yeah, just to leave on a lighter note, everybody, grab your Beatbox O2 hardware wallet or your Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. And make sure you push those coins off the exchange, because I think that there's going to be a rubber band that's going to flick us into the so it's just one of those things. I think when people look at, oh, record number of coins are leaving exchanges, that isn't necessarily going to make the number go up right now. So you could drive yourself mad by looking at it and go, number go up, it should go up, but it will just launch at some point.
Bingo. Exactly. That's a massive misconception a lot of people have with me talking about coins on exchanges. They think I'm talking about, price is going to pump next week. No, dickhead. This is going to be the short squeeze of a lifetime, and Bitcoin's going to go from $20,000 to $1 million in the space of 3 months.
This is a real MOAS.
Yes, the real MOAS. I watched 94% of your episode with Ben. Once I finish it, I'm going to go roast him because he did not answer my questions. I'm sorry, Ben. I still have my doubts and concerns over GME. Bitcoin is the great reset. Bitcoin is the real MOAS, the mother of all.
Maybe we should do like a Twitter space tonight with him and do a MOAS. Like, make it just the title will be MOAS.
We can. Let's do it, but you've got to let me go work. I've got to run. We've been going for like an hour and a half.
All right, sounds good. Well, yeah, plebs, grab yourself a Bitbox O2 hardware wallet. Thanks again to Shift Crypto for sponsoring the podcast, and we will catch you guys next week.
See you.
Adios, amigos. Sorry to be rude.
Hold up.